You've probably heard the horror stories, right? Public IT projects going wildly over budget. But how does a bill actually triple in price? Well, today we're going to dive into one of those stories, a huge tech overhaul at the Bank of England where the costs just skyrocketed.
So, let's start at the end, shall we? With the final bill. £21.5 million. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That is an absolutely staggering figure for a single IT contract.
Yep, that's the final tally for the Bank of England's big, ambitious plan to move its key systems over to the Oracle Cloud. It was meant to be this massive, game-changing upgrade. And, well, it came with a massive, game-changing price tag to match.
But here's the kicker. That £21.5 million figure, that is not where this story started, not even close. The project was originally put out to tender with a budget of just £7 million, a fraction of where it ended up.
That was the plan. So the big question, the one we're really digging into here is, how on earth do you go from a £7 million plan to a bill that's more than 3 times that size? So let's do it. Let's trace the journey of this Oracle Cloud project and try to pinpoint the decisions that led to this budget blowout. To really get how the costs ballooned like this, we have to rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning and look at what this project was even supposed to be.
So, the whole thing kicks off back in 2020. The idea? Move to Oracle Cloud. And on paper, the goal seemed pretty straightforward. Bring a bunch of different systems together under one roof and give the bank's core operations, we're talking finance, hiring, all that stuff, a major upgrade.
And the initial vision, it looked really solid. The objective was simple: consolidate. The goal was to get a step change in what they could do. They picked their tech, Oracle's Fusion applications, and they hired a partner to make it happen, a company called Version 1. In 2022, the tender goes out for a neat £7 million, a clear plan, a clear budget, or so it seemed.
Okay, now for the fun part. It's time to follow the money. Let's map out exactly when and why that £7 million figure started to look like a distant memory. I mean, when you see it on a timeline like this, the escalation is just wow. It starts at $7 million in 2022. By the next year, the contract is awarded for $8.7 million, so it's already creeping up. But then boom, less than 2 years later, it jumps to $13.8 million. And then it jumps again to that final $21.5 million. You have to ask, what on earth was going on? The official reasons are, well, they're very corporate, but they're also very telling. That first jump to almost $14 million, that was because of an amended implementation methodology. In plain English, that means the project got way more complicated than they first thought. They went from a simple 2-step plan to a multi-stage one, which means more work, more time, and of course, more money. The second jump was for additional works, stuff that wasn't even in the original plan. That is a classic case of what we call scope creep, and it's a huge red flag that maybe the project wasn't fully understood from the get-go. Now this brings us to a really critical question. With the costs just soaring, why did the Bank of England stick with the same company, Version 1? It's the question you or I would ask, right? If your builder told you your renovation was suddenly going to cost triple, you'd probably at least get a second quote. So why didn't they look for a cheaper option?
And here we have it, the official answer, right from the procurement notice. The bank basically said that switching suppliers at that point would cause significant inconvenience and a substantial duplication of costs. In other words, they felt like they were in too deep. They were locked in.
So their reasoning really came down to 4 things. Technically, everything had to work together. Economically, they figured switching would actually cost them even more. And then there's the practical side. Changing partners midstream would be a huge headache and mean redoing a bunch of work they'd already paid for. This right here is a textbook example of something called vendor lock-in, and it's a real trap that's tough to get out of once a project is underway. Now, to really understand this £21.5 million figure, we need to zoom out, because this one contract, as big as it is just one piece of a much, much larger tech spending puzzle at the Bank of England. And here's what that bigger picture looks like. Yeah, our £21.5 million project is a huge overspend, but look at this. It's just a slice of a much bigger pie. There's another $13 million for Oracle support, and then this, a colossal £86.7 million deal for SAP services. We're talking about an organization that operates in a world of massive 9-figure IT contracts.
Okay, and here's one final, really important piece of context. The Bank of England isn't funded quite like a normal government department. It's a public body, sure, but it actually makes more money than it spends. It contributes millions back to the UK Treasury. And that just adds another complicated layer to this whole conversation about its spending habits.
Which leaves us with this final, crucial question. For an institution that, literally prints money, is a tech bill that triples in size just an unavoidable cost of doing business in the modern world? Or is it a really costly miscalculation that maybe points to much deeper problems in how these giant public projects are planned and managed?